This video will go over the process for inking, wiping, and printing a Drypoint Intaglio plate. First step, it's really helpful to put some tape down that you put your plate on top of so that as I'm going to go and be rubbing this Intaglio ink into the plate isn't going to be moving around the flat file glass, so it's just staying in place. I have a little ink dauber, it's just felt over a cork, and I'm rubbing that ink into all of my Drypoint Intaglio lines. You want those lines to get loaded up with ink so that they're going to print really clearly. So you're going to cover your entire surface in ink in this way, and then we're going to wipe the excess ink off. I've now covered most of my plate, and then I'm also going to cover the bevel of my plate in some ink too. So now I'm going around that edge. I want my bevel to print. You don't have to print your bevel if you don't want to, but if you don't want it to print, you'll want to make sure it's totally wiped. Now I'm grabbing the wiping fabric and I'm bunching it up into a ball. I'm then going to be taking this fabric and I'm going to be wiping off the excess ink really kind of slowly and gradually. You don't want to press really hard because that can pull ink out of your intaglio lines. So you want to just slowly, gradually be wiping off this ink in this kind of circular motion. If your wiping fabric is getting loaded with ink, you can also start to rotate it so you get to a cleaner side. Now you can start to see my image is coming through, okay? So all of those areas that haven't been scratched, that ink is going to want to raise off of it as I start to wipe it with my wiping fabric. If your plate has a gray tone to it, when it prints, that can print like a kind of light gray atmosphere, which can be really nice. But if you want it to be light and the white of the paper, you can deduct out with like a Q-tip. Here I'm doing that on the arm to create kind of a bright highlight on my figure. This process of taking out ink with a Q-tip to create bright lights is also going to be pressure responsive. So if you're pressing really hard, you're going to get a sharp, bright highlight. I'm doing a kind of softer approach because I don't want those highlights to have too sharp of an edge. So keep in mind the kind of pressure that you're using and the effect that you want. Once you've finished inking and wiping your plate, you're going to be almost ready to print the plate and get it on the press. So first you want to get it off the flat file. I was having some difficulty with this, so I just grabbed a palette knife to help me get it off of there. That blue tape was really kind of making the plate suction down onto our flat file. So I grabbed it off though. And then before you take it to the press, you want to make sure there's not a bunch of ink on the back that's going to get the press dirty. So you can just take your wiping fabric and wipe off any kind of inky spots that might have gotten onto the back of your plate. Then you'll be ready to take it over to our etching press. And with our etching press, the etching press, as you can see, has a grid on it. So you want to take your plate and position it into the middle of your grid. And then you can also use that grid to put your paper in the correct place too, so that your plate is going to be centered onto your paper. So just kind of keep in mind whatever your paper size is and get that onto the middle of the etching press. Now I'm going to grab a sheet of my printmaking paper out of my damp book to print my Drypoint Intaglio onto. My hands are clean. Make sure your hands are clean before you grab this paper. For Drypoint Intaglio, we have to print onto a dampened piece of paper, so I'll be showing that in a separate video. This allows the ink to kind of fully go into the paper. This is also really helpful for this process to have a buddy, especially if you have like a relatively large piece of paper like I do here. So it's not kind of flopping down onto the press, but still able to do it. But having a printmaking buddy definitely helps. You're then also going to put a piece of newsprint on top of your printmaking paper. That's also just in case any ink comes through the paper. If you have something really heavily inked, then it's not getting onto the press and the printmaking blankets and all the equipment that we all use. Smooth out those printmaking blankets before you run anything through the press. And then you're going to check the press tension as well, which I'll be helping with in class before we start to run it through. So we need to make sure that both sides are at the same tension as we run the plate through. As you're running it through, you're also going to feel that it's kind of snug. You want all that pressure, and we can see that pressure rising through even the newsprint. Okay, I can see my plate. I'm then going to go to my plate and tap it. That helps release the paper a little bit. And I'm grabbing a corner and going out from the corner and getting my print. And here's the big printmaking reveal. This is why printmaking is so fun. It's so incredible to see how things print and how it comes through in the end.